Hello and welcome back to another video on my channel. Thank you for the support on the first video. I do really appreciate it, and I'm going to be having videos coming every Sunday, so subscribe if you haven't already and stay tuned for that. So today I'm going to be talking about synthetic versus natural components in a fragrance, and can we really decide which one is better? Before I start, I'm going to show you my scent of the day. It's this one here, Aqua Vitae Cologne Fort by Maison Francis Kurkdjian. It's a really nice, light, florally, citrusy scent, and it's great for the summertime, which we are just coming out of in Australia, and it still is a little bit warm here. So the first thing I'm going to do is explain how naturals work in fragrances and how synthetics work in fragrances, and then we're going to see which one is better. Now, I don't know about you, but a lot of the marketing I've been seeing from a lot of startup fragrance companies in particular is that they're saying that they're, all natural or prioritizing natural ingredients, that they're vegan, clean, all these kind of things. And a lot of people are advising that you get natural fragrances, or really pushing forward the natural fragrances, and really just kind of talking bad about synthetics in fragrances. And look, I feel this is a marketing thing across multiple industries, particularly the food industry. We talk about organic, fresh, natural ingredients compared to synthetic ingredients. And are they actually better, or does it really make much of a difference in the overall composition? First of all, let's talk natural fragrance. Now, as you'll see, if you look on Fragrantica or any other website, you'll see fragrance notes, and it will show you notes of different fruits, flowers, herbs, spices, woods, so many natural scents that it's using in this fragrance. Often that is marketing, but occasionally that can be reflective of naturals that are in the fragrance. So a majority of fragrances are steeped in what we see in real life, in real existence, what we smell in our environment. And before all of these synthetic compounds had actually been synthesized, fragrances were predominantly made using natural ingredients. Now the question is, how do you get these natural ingredients, or where do they come from? Now typically, natural ingredients will come in two different forms: essential oils and absolutes. Now both are generally the same thing. It's extracting all the oils and chemicals inside of a plant and removing the plant matter. Now the difference between these two is the extraction method. Essential oils are extracted using steam distillation. So they're effectively using water to extract the oils from the plant, whatever it is. The most common essential oils you'll see typically tend to be of fruits and herbs, which are typically a bit easier to extract. However, with fruits, it's only really possible to extract from citrus fruits. If you've ever seen things like apples, pears, strawberries, blackberries, all different types of berries, they don't have essential oils. You can look online, you can't find essential oils for these things. That's because they don't contain oil, which contains a fragrance compound. You can't extract from these fruits, but you can also extract essential oils from different types of flowers, woods, and for the most part, it's done using steam distillation. Now, if we compare that to an absolute is where it has been solvent extracted. So this is using a chemical solvent which will remove as much of the plant material as possible and leave behind all of the compounds that are left inside, which typically includes the fragrance compounds, but also a lot of other compounds. Essential oils and absolutes are not just used for fragrances, they have other uses as well, but fragrances is one of their big uses. Absolutes tend to be more concentrated than what essential oils are, because it's more efficient to extract using a solvent than it is using water. And that's why you may see, if you're researching fragrance ingredients, absolutes typically tend to be more expensive than essential oils. But absolutes are necessary. There are a lot of plants that don't really do well with steam distillation or can't be distilled through steam. Things like jasmine, rose, tobacco, Boronia are such delicate plants that they can't be extracted through steam distillation. They need to be extracted through a solvent. But these absolutes are so expensive because you need all of this plant matter to just get this little bit of absolute out of it. A big example of this is vanilla. You need a lot of vanilla beans to extract only a small amount of vanillin, which is the fragrance compound, or what you would call a vanilla extract. So much so that vanilla extract from a natural bean costs about $1,800 per kilo, whereas lab synthesized vanillin costs $25 per kilo. That is a huge difference. So now that we understand a little bit more about our natural components, let's talk about our synthetics. Now, synthetics, as the name suggests, are lab synthesized fragrance materials. These materials are synthesized for the purpose of making fragrances, but another very common use is in food flavoring as well. As scent and taste are so closely intertwined, a lot of these compounds will also carry the taste that we're familiar with. There are thousands upon thousands upon thousands of synthetic chemicals that can be used for fragrance. And the benefit is they're actually quite cheap to make. As I just said, $25 per kilo of vanillin compared to $1,800 per kilo of pure vanilla extract. Personally, for me, if I'm running a business, I know what one I'm taking. And look, with synthetics, I'm not going to sit here and tell you that every single synthetic is completely safe for you, because I don't know that. I don't know that for certain. But what is key to note with synthetics is that the IFRA, the International Fragrance Association, places heavy restrictions on how much of a synthetic can be used. One of my personal favorite compounds, cinnamaldehyde, is limited to 0.05% of your total fragrance composition. Now keep in mind, in a 50 ml bottle, half a mil is 1%. And the IFRA is constantly banning chemicals as well. So much so that in the big companies, some people's jobs are literally to find new fragrances that are alternatives to banned substances. The IFRA heavily regulates the compounds that can go into a fragrance and how much of it can go in. Now, I do see some chat online around some perfumes being endocrine disruptors, and that can be because of certain compounds that are in the fragrance. Things like parabens, phthalates, and some synthetic musks can be endocrine disruptors. But a lot of these compounds, again, are heavily regulated by the IFRA. Now, I don't feel like I need to talk too much about what a synthetic compound is going to do in a fragrance, because for any scent that you want to achieve, there is a compound that will help you achieve that. One thing that synthetics have done is they've really opened up the world of fragrances. We are seeing so many more different scents these days because there's just so many more different smells available to us. It's very difficult to create a gourmand fragrance naturally, because there's no essential oil for sugar or caramel or chestnut. A lot of these scents have been made synthetically. And or even still, if people were using authentic vanilla extract in every single one of their fragrances would be hundreds and hundreds of dollars more than what they are now. Synthetic compounds allow us to get any scent that we could possibly dream of. Now it just sounds like I'm glazing the hell out of synthetic compounds. What I'm trying to actually do is just to get you to understand that synthetic compounds aren't something to be scared of. Just because something is synthetic and made in a lab doesn't mean that it's going to be harmful to you. Now that we've got a bit of an understanding of both, let's talk about their differences and what makes each one better. And if we can work out if there is one that's better than the other. Now, my first point I'm going to make is about batch variation. Batch variation is a bit of a hot topic around some fragrance brands at the moment, particularly Creed. Aventus seems to just have so much batch variation, but it's not the only fragrance that has batch variation. There are a few that do have it. Now, natural components in a fragrance can cause batch variation. Because, for example, if you have this one fragrance that you make year on year, say you've got a 20-year run with this fragrance, and you use an essential oil, let's take orange, for example. Now, can you guarantee that this orange that you're getting every single year, can you guarantee that the oranges being used for this essential oil are going to have the same composition every single year, year in, year out? You can't. And something as sensitive as a fragrance, even the smallest changes in composition can completely change the feel of your fragrance. And that's where we get batch variation. Although in some instances, batch variation is intentional, but we're not talking about that today. And the reason is, with naturals, you can't control the quantity of what you're putting in there. You can't control the quantity of the scent molecules, because there's not just one molecule that gives the scent of orange. Because all citrus fruits share the one scent molecule that makes up a majority of their scent profile. This is the name of it here. I don't remember how to pronounce it right now, but this is it. And it makes up something stupid like 95% of the scent profile. The little differences are created in the aldehydes. Now see, with synthetics, you can control the exact amounts of different compounds you're putting in. So you can create an accord of synthetic chemicals that makes it smell like an orange, and it'll have mostly the same composition. But with the oranges, you can't control the composition year in, year out. Every single batch of essential oil will have little small differences, but sometimes these differences may be bigger than others. And sometimes some suppliers might not have it available, so you have to switch to another supplier, and that can completely change things. So that is what can cause you batch variation. The second point I'm going to talk about is accurate scents. Now, this point I'm about to make is very subjective, because fragrance, like anything else that's creative, is art. And the perfumer is creating art when they're building a fragrance. So every perfumer's interpretation of what they want something to smell like is going to be different. But if you want to hit a certain note and you want to do it very accurately, naturals are going to achieve this a lot easier than what you can do with synthetics. Now, there is nothing stopping you from building a really strong accord that can match the scent profile of what you would get in a natural. And a lot of perfumers do this, particularly with scents like jasmine, rose, neroli, things that are super expensive to acquire. They will just make accords synthetically that will match that scent profile. And perfumers are getting so good that they're pretty damn good at doing it these days. However, it's a much more convenient and easier for the perfumer, and you get a much more natural scent by using the natural extract of that plant. However, as I said, this is up for interpretation. Everything is subjective. This is art. This is the perfumer's art. Their interpretation of how they want a note to smell is completely up to them. So this might not benefit all perfumers, but if you do want that accurate scent, you've got it there. The third reason is what I was talking about earlier, IFRA regulations. Now, IFRA heavily regulate a lot of compounds, but the thing is, these aren't just the synthetically produced compounds, it is the compound in your entire composition. So if this compound is naturally present in an essential oil or an extract that you want to use, you need to be mindful of how much you're actually using and that it matches the IFRA regulations. You can't just go and take an essential oil or an extract and put as much of it as you want in there if it potentially contains one of these limited chemicals. Because whether it's synthetically produced or it's naturally occurring, it's still a limited chemical. Your skin and your body does not care if it was produced chemically or naturally. That might be a shock, I know, but it's the same chemical. Whether it's made in a lab or it's made in a flower, it's the same chemical. And I don't think people understand that sometimes. It's the same thing. Realistically, the difference you're getting is an essential oil will contain the natural composition of this plant that you're trying to mimic the scent of, whereas a synthetic will have its own particular scent profile and you need to mix it and create an accord to mimic that scent. And synthetics allow you to be more in line with your regulations than what the naturals do. And my last point I want to make is pricing. Now, natural components can be very, 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 very expensive. As I was talking about, $1,800 per kilogram of vanilla extract. I was looking at a neroli essential oil today. It was about $100 for 10 mils. Naturals are expensive. Don't even get me started on how expensive jasmine or rose extract is. Those really high in-demand compounds. Whereas you can mimic their scent profile using a very, very cheap synthetically made accord. And it kind of makes you think, if you can use a synthetic version of this naturally occurring scent for 1% or 0.5% of the cost, why wouldn't you? And there are a lot of reasons why you would or you wouldn't prefer one or the other. It really is, at the end of the day, up to the perfumer and what kind of budget they're working with. But in general, naturals are a lot more expensive than synthetics. Now, we've covered over some points and there are a lot more points of difference between the two, but I feel that these are the key ones. Now the question is, what's better? In my opinion, it's neither. What do I mean by that? When I make perfumes, I really love to use a combination of both. My preference is to always go with naturals first and then add aroma chemicals after. My first ever scent that I made can be made completely using natural materials. But if I was to make it using synthetic materials, it could be a lot cheaper, but it would also require me to make my own accords, which is a little bit of a challenge and does require a pretty advanced level of perfumery skill. So if you're a beginner, using naturals is a much better option for you because you get the completed scent without having to do the trial and error and using resources to make your accord to match this flower, this fruit, this plant, whatever it is. For me, I think the best fragrances have a combination of natural and synthetic compounds. Getting those true natural scents and combining them with really cool, interesting ideas to make really unique fragrances that no one's ever thought of before. And that is the beauty of the art of perfumery. So that's all for today. I really hope you enjoyed the video. I hope you learned a thing or two. If you enjoyed it, please leave a like, subscribe, leave a comment, tell me what you think, and I will see you next Sunday.